I loved my husband with all my heart, but when I found out he had been living a double and betraying me for years, I decided to end the marriage and rebuild my happiness from scratch. Sounds pathetic, right? Like something out of a bad movie. But that's how my perfect marriage of 8 years came crashing down. A crumpled piece of paper in his jeans pocket from a hotel I'd never heard of, dated last Tuesday when he said he was working late, the Riverside Inn, room 237, 2 nights. My hands shook as I stared at it. Marcus had been home both those nights. I remembered because we watched our show together, shared takeout on the couch, made love on Wednesday morning before he left for work. Normal. Everything felt so normal. I should have confronted him right then. Should have thrown the receipt in his face and demanded answers. Instead, I did something that still makes me sick to think about. I became a detective in my own marriage. The bank statements came next. 3 months of charges I'd never noticed because Marcus handled our finances. Dinners at restaurants we'd never been to. Gas stations across town when he worked 10 minutes from home. A jewelry store purchase for $800 that I definitely never received. My chest felt tight like I was drowning in our king-sized bed every night while he slept peacefully beside me. He'd reach for me in his sleep sometimes, pull me close, and I'd lie there rigid, wondering whose perfume was on his work shirts. The worst part, he was still the same Marcus, still me goodbye every morning, still texted me random memes during lunch, still held my hand during movies and told me he loved me before we fell asleep. I started checking his phone when he showered. The messages were deleted, but the call logs told a story. Same number multiple times a day, always when I wasn't around. I reverse searched it online like some crazy person. Sarah Chen, real estate agent. Her LinkedIn showed a gorgeous woman with a bright smile and perfect teeth. Of course she was beautiful. Of course she looked nothing like me with my mom body and tired eyes from raising our 7-year-old daughter Emma alone while he worked late, constantly. The photos on her Instagram made me want to throw. Beach vacations, fancy dinners, tastings, all the things Marcus and I used to do before Emma was born, before it got complicated, before he apparently decided I wasn't enough anymore. I found their hotel registration online. Mr. and Mrs. Chen. He'd used her last name. They'd been playing house while I was at home helping Emma with homework and meal prepping for the week like a good little wife. 3 years. The records went back 3 years. Emma was 4 when this started. 4 years old, asking why Daddy was never home for dinner anymore, why he missed her dance recitals, why he seemed tired and distracted during our family time. I'd made excuses for him, protected him, told our daughter that Daddy worked hard to take care of us. What a fool I was. The night I decided to end it, Marcus came home with flowers. Grocery store roses, probably grabbed on his way back from her place. He smiled that crooked smile I'd fallen in love with in college and said he missed me. Row day at work, he said, kissing my forehead. But seeing makes everything better. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled back and put the flowers in water while he went upstairs to shower off the evidence of his other. Emma was in bed. The house was quiet. This was it. When he came back downstairs in his pajamas, hair still damp, I was sitting on the couch with a glass of and a manila folder. "We need to talk," I said. Something in my voice made his face change. The casual mask slipped and for just a second, I saw panic in his eyes. He knew, somewhere deep down. He'd always known this moment would come. "Sit down, Marcus." He sat across from me, not next to me like he usually would, already putting distance between us. I opened the folder and pulled out the receipts, the bank statements, the printed photos from Sarah's social media. I laid them out on the coffee table between us like evidence in a crime scene. Because that's what this was, a crime against our family. 3 years, I said quietly. 3 years been lying to my face every single day. He opened his mouth to deny it, then closed it again. The evidence was overwhelming. "How long we're planning to keep living this double?" My voice cracked. "We're ever going to choose. Or we're just going to keep both of us forever. It's not what think." He started, but I held my hand. Please don't insult me more than already have." We sat in silence for what felt like hours. Emma's night light cast shadows on the wall, and I thought about how I was going to explain to my 7-year-old why Daddy wouldn't be living with us anymore. He whispered finally. "No," I said, gathering the papers. Can't love someone and do this to them. Can't love child and steal 3 years of her lying to her face every day." I stood, folder in hand, and looked down at the man I'd built my entire around. "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. Have until the weekend to get things and find somewhere else to live." His face crumpled. "Please, we can work through this. Couples counseling, anything. I'll end it with her, I swear." Should have thought about that 3 years ago. I walked to the stairs, then turned back. Emma's dance recital is next month. The one I'll probably miss because I'll be too busy playing house with Sarah. But this time at least I won't have to make excuses for. That night I called my sister and told her everything. She cried with me until sunrise, and I realized I hadn't felt this alone in years, even though I'd been married the whole time. The man I'd trusted with my heart, my body, my future, had been a stranger all along. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and disappointment. Marcus had moved out 3 days ago, taking his clothes and leaving behind 8 years of memories scattered around our house like landmines. His coffee mug still sat in the sink. Emma kept asking when Daddy was coming home. "What grounds are filing under?" Attorney Williams asked, her pen poised over legal forms that would dissolve my marriage. "Adultery," I said, sliding the folder across her mahogany desk. "I have documentation." She flipped through the evidence I'd gathered, her expression neutral, professional, like she'd seen this story 1,000 times before. "This is substantial," she said finally. "Husband was careless. Like forgetting to take out the trash, not destroying our family. There's something else," I said, my stomach churning. "I hired a private investigator after I found the receipts. The report came back yesterday. The PI's findings were worse than I'd imagined. Marcus and Sarah weren't just having an affair. They'd been looking at houses together, had credit cards. She wore a ring on her left hand in recent photos. He'd been planning to leave us all along. He's been funneling money into a separate account. I continued, handing over the financial records. $40,000 over the past year. Money from our savings from Emma's college fund. Attorney Williams whistled low. That's financial misconduct. We can use this. Money I'd been saving from my part-time bookkeeping job. Coins Emma had collected in her piggy bank. Birthday checks from my parents. All of it redirected to fund his fantasy with another woman. I want full custody, I said, and I want the house. Given this evidence, that's very likely. But I need to warn, these cases get fast. Is husband likely to dirty? I thought about the Marcus I'd married. The one who cried at our wedding, who held Emma the day she was born like she was made of glass, who used to leave love notes in my lunch bag. I don't know who he is anymore. The divorce papers were served at his office. I know because his secretary called me confused, asking if there was some mistake. Apparently, Marcus had told everyone at work that I was going through a rough patch with postpartum depression. Emma was 7 years old. There was no postpartum anything. But that was Marcus, always with a story, always the victim. His mother called that night sobbing. How could do this to him, she cried. He made one mistake. Marriage is about forgiveness. One mistake. 3 years was one mistake. Did know? I asked her about Sarah's silence. Then, quietly, I suspected something, but I thought it would pass. Men sometimes stray, honey. It doesn't mean anything. I hung on her. Emma's questions got harder every day. Why can't daddy just say sorry and come home? Is it my fault he left? Does daddy not love us anymore? How do explain betrayal to a 7-year-old? How do tell daughter that the man she worshipped spent 3 years lying to both of every single day? I stuck to the basics. Mommy and daddy weren't happy together anymore. Sometimes grown-ups need to live in different places. She was loved. This wasn't her fault. But she knew. Kids always know when not telling them everything. Marcus's visits were awkward, scheduled affairs. He'd pick Emma on Saturday mornings and she'd come back quiet and confused. He was different with her now, distracted like his mind was somewhere else. It usually was. One Saturday, Emma came home with a new bracelet. Daddy's friend Sarah gave it to me, she said innocently. She's really pretty, mommy. She lives in a big apartment with a swimming pool. My went cold. He was introducing our daughter to his mistress, making her complicit in his lies. I called him immediately. How dare bring Emma around her? I hissed into the phone. Sarah's part of my now, he said, and I could hear the defensiveness in his voice. Emma needs to get used to it. She's 7 years old, Marcus. She's still trying to understand why her family fell apart. Maybe if weren't being so vindictive about this whole thing, it would be easier for everyone. Vindictive. I was vindictive for refusing to pretend his affair never happened. I'm filing for a modification to the custody agreement, I told him. No overnight visits until this is settled. And Emma doesn't meet Sarah again. Can't do that. Watch me. But he was right to be confident. His lawyer was better than mine, more expensive. Paid for with the money he'd stolen from our accounts. The judge ruled that I couldn't prevent Emma from meeting Sarah, as long as they weren't living together. Apparently, fathers had rights, even when they were proven liars and cheats. Emma started having nightmares. She'd wake crying, confused about where she belonged, who she could trust. Her grades slipped. Her teacher called to express concerns about her behavior in class. My perfect, happy daughter was falling apart, and there was nothing I could do to protect her from the fallout of her father's choices. The worst part was watching people pick sides. Marcus's family rallied around him, painting me as the bitter ex-wife who couldn't forgive a mistake. Our mutual friends awkwardly avoided mentioning either of us when we ran into them around town. My book club, where I'd been a member for 5 years, suddenly felt cold. Half the women were divorced themselves, but the other half looked at me like I was contagious, like failed marriage was something they might catch. Maybe should try counseling, one of them suggested over coffee. My marriage went through a rough patch too. A rough patch. Not 3 years of systematic deception and financial theft. I stopped going to book club. I stopped going to a lot of places, actually. The grocery store where Marcus and I used to shop together. The park where we'd taken Emma as a toddler. The restaurants where we'd celebrated anniversaries. Everything in our small town held memories, and all of them now. The loneliness was suffocating. I'd been with Marcus since college. My entire identity was wrapped in being his wife, Emma's mother, part of a family unit that no longer existed. Who was I without him? The answer came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, when Emma crawled into my bed crying because she'd wet herself. She was 7 years old and hadn't had an accident in years. I'm sorry, mommy, she whispered. I dreamed daddy was gone forever and I got scared. I held her close, changed her clothes, put fresh sheets on her bed. As I tucked her back in, she grabbed my hand. Won't leave too, Will? Never, I promised. I will never, ever leave. And in that moment I realized who I was without Marcus. I was Emma's mother, her protector, her constant in a world that had been turned upside down by the selfish choices of the man who was supposed to love her most. Marcus could have Sarah, her swimming pool, their stolen money, and their fantasy built on lies. I had our daughter's trust, and I was going to like to deserve it. The divorce hearing was scheduled for the following month. I spent every day preparing, gathering evidence, building my case. But Marcus had one more surprise waiting for me. The night before we were supposed to appear in court, his lawyer called mine. They're not going to the divorce, Attorney Williams told me. He's agreeing to terms, full custody, the house, everything. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt a chill run down my spine. Why? What's the catch? His moving to California with Sarah. New job, fresh start. He wants to settle quickly so they can leave next month. Emma's father was abandoning her completely. trading her for his girlfriend's dream of a beach house and a without complications. I hung the phone and stared at my daughter's artwork covering the refrigerator. Stick figure drawings of our family, back when we were whole. Back when I believed we were happy. Now she'd grow knowing her father chose another woman over her. The final papers came in the mail on a Thursday. Emma was at school. I sat alone in the kitchen I'd painted yellow because Marcus said it looked cheerful, holding the documents that officially ended my marriage. 8 years reduced to legal jargon and dollar amounts. I should have felt victorious. I'd gotten everything I asked for. The house, full custody, financial support. But victories aren't supposed to feel this hollow. Marcus left for California on a Tuesday. Emma didn't even get a proper goodbye. He sent a text saying his flight was early, that he'd call her when he got settled. Like she was an afterthought. Like 8 years of being her father could be wrapped in a promise to video chat someday. She waited by the window for 3 hours that evening. Maybe he changed his mind, she whispered. Maybe he's coming back to say goodbye properly. He never came. The first month was the hardest. Emma would ask every day if Daddy had called. When I'd say no, she'd make excuses for him. He's probably really busy with his new job. Maybe his phone doesn't work yet. He'll call tomorrow for sure. I let her hold on to hope because I didn't know how to tell a 7-year-old that some people just disappear from without warning. That sometimes the people who are supposed to love most are the ones who deepest. When he finally called, 6 weeks later, Emma was so excited she could barely contain herself. She ran to her room to get her new school photo, ready to show him through the screen. The call lasted 12 minutes. Marcus looked tan and happy sitting in what was obviously Sarah's bright modern kitchen. He asked surface-level questions about school, complimented Emma's haircut, promised to send her a postcard from the beach. When Emma started crying and begging him to come visit, he got uncomfortable. Daddy has to go now, sweetheart. Sarah and I are meeting friends for dinner. But we'll talk again soon, okay? Soon turned into 2 months, then 4. Then Christmas came and went with a gift card in the mail and no phone call. Emma stopped asking when he was coming back. Stopped mentioning him at all. She buried her pain so deep that her teacher recommended counseling, because she'd gone from an outgoing, chatty kid to someone who barely spoke in class. The therapist was kind but honest. Children of abandonment often struggle with trust for the rest of their lives, she explained during one of our sessions. Emma's learning that the people who claim to love her can just leave. That's a wound that doesn't fully heal. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call Marcus and make him understand what his selfishness had cost his daughter, but I'd blocked his number after the 3rd time he called, wanting to explain his side of the story, his side, like there was some justification for stealing from family and abandoning child. The financial reality hit 6 months later. Child support was supposed to be automatic deducted from his California salary. But Marcus had quit his new job after 3 weeks and was working freelance now, making it nearly impossible to track his income. His payments went from irregular to non-existent. I had to sell Emma's piano. The one she'd been taking lessons on since she was 5, the one she loved to play when she was sad. We needed the money for groceries. She didn't cry when the movers took it away. She just stood at the window watching, and I saw something behind her eyes. Another piece of childhood sacrifice to her father's choices. I picked extra bookkeeping clients, working late into the night after Emma went to bed. My eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets, but the bills kept coming. House payments, utilities, therapy appointments, school supplies. All the expenses that used to be shared now fell on my part-time income. Emma started wearing the same 3 outfits to school on rotation because I couldn't afford new clothes. Her shoes had holes in them. She never complained, never asked for anything, and that broke my heart more than any tantrum would have. I was failing her. Despite getting full custody, despite winning the house, despite everything the lawyer had promised would make us secure, we were struggling to survive. The house became a burden instead of a victory. The heating bill was astronomical. The roof leaked in 2 places. The mortgage payments ate most of my income, leaving barely enough for food and Emma's basic needs. But I couldn't sell it. This was Emma's home, the only stability she had left. I couldn't take that away from her too. My sister started sending money she couldn't afford to spare. My parents, living on Social Security, offered to help however they could. I was 32 years old and being supported by family members who'd already raised their children. The shame was overwhelming. Emma's 8th birthday came in March. I scraped together enough money for a small party, invited her classmates, tried to make it special. But when she blew out her candles, I saw her look toward the door like she was still hoping Marcus would walk in with a present and an apology. He didn't even call. That night, after the last friend went home and Emma was in bed, I sat surrounded by birthday wrapping paper and wondered how I'd gotten here. How the I'd built so carefully had crumbled so completely. I wasn't just raising Emma alone. I was raising her in the shadow of abandonment, trying to repair damage I hadn't caused while barely keeping us afloat financially. The worst part was the judgment from people who didn't understand. Should have tried harder to work it out. Marcus's mother said during one of her rare calls, Emma needs her father. Maybe pushed him away by being too demanding. Suggested a former friend. Men need space to figure things out. Have thought about dating again. Asked my well-meaning neighbor. Emma could use a positive male role model. Everyone had opinions about how I should handle the wreckage of my marriage. No one seemed to understand that I was doing everything I could just to survive each day. Dating felt impossible. Who wants to take on a bitter divorced woman and her traumatized child? Who wants to deal with the financial stress, the therapy appointments, the constant worry about whether Emma would ever trust anyone again? Besides, I barely had time to shower most days, let alone put on makeup and pretend to be interesting to some stranger across a dinner table. The loneliness was crushing, but the responsibility was heavier. Emma was watching my every move, learning from my example how to handle betrayal and abandonment. If I fell apart completely, she would too. So I kept going. Got every morning, made breakfast, helped with homework, tucked her in at night with stories and songs. Pretended everything was fine while my marriage counselor taught me coping mechanisms and my financial advisor explained bankruptcy procedures. Emma started wetting the bed again. Having panic when I was 5 minutes late picking her from school. Clinging to me in crowds, terrified I'd disappear like her father had. It's not fault, baby, I'd tell her during the worst episodes. Daddy leaving had nothing to do with, or perfect and loved. But she was 8 years old, trying to process betrayal with a child's understanding. In her mind, if Daddy could just leave without explanation, maybe Mommy could too. Trust once broken spreads its damage in ways can't predict or control. The second Christmas without Marcus was particularly brutal. Emma had stopped asking for things she wanted, knowing we couldn't afford them. Instead, she made me a card with crayons and construction paper that said, "Thank for staying." 8 years old. And she was grateful that her remaining parent hadn't abandoned her too. I cried in the bathroom for an hour that night. The final came in January, 18 months after Marcus left. A mutual friend from college posted photos from her New Year's Eve party in California. There was Marcus, laughing with Sarah, her hand prominently displaying a diamond engagement ring. He was getting married again. Moving on with his like Emma and I had never existed. I stared at the photos for hours, analyzing every detail. Sarah looked happy and carefree, untouched by the destruction that had created their relationship. Marcus looked younger somehow, like leaving his family had lifted a weight from his shoulders. They looked like people with no regrets. Emma was in bed, finally sleeping peacefully for once. I walked through our quiet house past the empty spaces where Marcus's things used to be, past Emma's artwork depicting our broken family. This was my now, single mother, struggling financially, watching my daughter battles no child should face. All because the man I'd trusted with everything decided we weren't worth staying for. The fairy tale was over. The prince had chosen someone else. And Emma and I were left to clean the wreckage of the he'd shattered when he walked away. I turned off the lights and went to bed alone, like I would every night for the foreseeable future. In the morning, Emma would wake and ask if Daddy called. I'd say no, and she'd nod like she expected nothing else. We'd have breakfast and go through the motions of a normal day, both of us pretending we weren't carrying wounds that might never fully heal. Some betrayals don't end with the divorce papers. They echo through generations, teaching children that love isn't permanent and promises don't mean anything. Marcus got his fresh start, his dream, his second chance at happiness. Emma got therapy appointments and trust issues that would follow her into every relationship she'd ever attempt. I got the house, full custody, and the crushing realization that winning a divorce doesn't undo the damage of losing a marriage. Sometimes when I'm lying awake at 3 a.m., listening to Emma cry in her sleep, I wonder if she'll ever forgive me for not being able to protect her from this. For not seeing the signs sooner. For choosing wrong when I chose her father. But mostly, I just try to survive another day in the that betrayal built.